This is lesson 2-2, properties of operations. Our essential question, how can you use properties of operations to rewrite expressions? Pause the video to copy that down. Okay, we have a lot of vocab with this lesson. And with each vocab, I put an example. It's essential that you write down these examples because you're going to need to refer back to them as we go through the examples and when you do the practice problems. So please write down these examples as well. You can do them in different colors like I did if it will help you, or you can just write them down all in pencil. That's fine. So we have the commutative property of addition, which states that the order in which the numbers are added doesn't change the sum. So if we have A plus B, that's the same thing as B plus A. So let me give that to you in numbers. So if we had 5 plus 3, that's the same thing as 3 plus 5. So that's all that means. And then the commutative property of multiplication is the same thing, but instead of adding, it's with multiplying. So it states that the order in which the numbers are multiplied does not change the product. So I'm going to use 5 and 3 again. So 5 times 3 is the same as 3 times 5. Please pause to copy all that down. And then we have the associative properties. So the associative property of addition states that the way numbers are grouped does not affect the sum. If you remember back to the last lesson, 2-1, I said that parentheses tells you that that's what you do first. But they're saying no matter what you do first, you're still going to get the same answer. So let me give that to you in numbers again. If I have 1 plus 2 plus 3, so in this case I would do 2 plus 3 first, which is 5, plus my 1, that gives me 6. I'm going to do the same thing over here. 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 3 is also 6. Okay, and then the associative property of multiplication states that the way numbers are grouped does not affect the product. So same exact thing, but now instead of adding, it's multiplying. So if you use those same numbers, we would have first, we would have 2 times 3, which is 6, times 1 is still 6. Or on the other side, we have 1 times 2 is 2, and then times 3 is 6. Pause to copy. And then we have identity properties. So the identity property of addition states that the sum of any number and 0 is just the same number. So if we have 9 plus 0, our answer is still 9. We already know that, but now we're just giving it a name. The identity property of multiplication states that the product of a number and 1 is that number. So again, if we had 9 times 1, it still equals 9. Again, we already know anything multiplied by 1 is the same number. But now we have a name. Pause to copy. Okay, example number 1. For all the examples, we are going to find the missing number, which has a line. So wherever there's a line, that's our missing number. And we're going to tell what property. That's why I wanted you to copy down the examples so you could look at them. All right, so here's how you find the missing number. So you are looking at what's in front of the equal sign and what's on the other side of the equal sign. And you want them to be the same. So let's compare. We have a 14 on this side, and we also have a 14 on this side. We have 32 on this side, and we also have a 32 on this side. So what's the one number that we're missing? That would be 5. So that's our missing number. Now we have a 5, a 14, and a 32 on the first side of the equation, and we have a 5, a 14, and a 32 on the other side of the equation. So now they're equal. Now we have to decide what property they're showing us. So we already know that we're multiplying because you can see that right here. So it has to be something of multiplication. I might run out of room a little bit here, but you know how to write multiplication. So it's going to be either the commutative property, the associative property, or the identity property. So if you look back to your examples, you could see that the associative property is the one that talks about grouping numbers. It's the one that has parentheses. So that makes this the associative property. And I'm going to run out of room, so I have to write it down here. So we have the associative property of multiplication. So basically, if you do not see parentheses, it's the commutative property. If you do see parentheses, it's the associative property. And if you have a 0 or a 1 in there, it's the identity property. So you can think about it that way. You can even write that down if you think it'll help you. All right, on to example number 2. So again, finding the missing number and telling what property. So let's compare. We have a 19 on this side, and we don't have a 19 on the other side, so that's actually our missing number. So that was pretty quick. So now you can see that we have a 19 on this side, 19 over here, 42 on this side, 42 on this side, 8 and 8. So now that the equation is balanced, it's equal on both sides. So you can see that we are adding. So it's some property of addition. Okay, now this is like example 1. We have grouping. We know that the associative property tells us about grouping. So it's going to be the associative property of addition. Example 3. This is a even simpler one. So finding the missing number, we have 12 and 12, and then that just leaves us the 8 that we're missing. Now, this one, we have no parentheses. I don't see a 0 here, so that means it is the commutative property. And remember that the commutative property just says that whatever order you add them in, your answer is going to be the same. It's the commutative property of addition because we're adding. Okay, last example. Find our missing number. We have 42 and 42, 8 and 8, and 3 and 3. So this one is a little more tricky. So this one has to be the identity property. Now, think back or look back to what the identity property has. It has a specific number in it. It has a 1. Because we know when we multiply anything by 1, it stays the same. So we could put as many ones in there as we want, and it's not going to change the value. So both sides of the equation are still equal. This side, when you multiply it, will still equal the same as this side. So it's the identity property of multiplication because we're multiplying. Okay, here's your practice problems. You're doing exactly what we just did in the examples, finding the missing number and writing the property. Please look back at the examples for help. Don't forget your word problem or question and rate your understanding. Please don't forget that. That is very important.